The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched higher than most mountains. 12 different alien species sat in their floating chairs, looking down at the two humans standing in the center. The air smelled strange, like metal and old flowers. Jinwoo Park kept his face calm as he looked up at the aliens. Next to him, Myeon Kim stood perfectly still, but her eyes moved constantly, watching everything. Council leader Vexthon was huge, with 6 arms and skin like purple leather. His voice boomed through the hall when he spoke. Humans of Earth, you have been found guilty of dangerous expansion across our galaxy. You take planets too quickly. You fight too much. You do not listen to our rules. Jinwoo had expected this. For months, the council had been complaining about human colonies. They said humans moved too fast, built too much, and asked too few questions. Other alien races took hundreds of years to settle one new world. Humans could do it in decades. The council has decided your punishment. Vexthon continued. All humans will leave the civilized galaxy. You will go to Cathara 9. A cold feeling went through Jinwoo's chest. He had heard of Cathara 9. Every spacefarer had. It was a Class 0 death world, the worst kind of planet possible. The council members were all looking at him now, waiting for fear. Myeon leaned closer to Jinwoo and whispered, "They want us to beg." But Jinwoo just nodded. "We understand the council's decision. What support will be provided for the relocation?" The aliens looked surprised. They had expected screaming, pleading, maybe even violence. Instead, the human ambassador was asking practical questions. Vexthon's 6 arms moved in what might have been confusion. "You accept this sentence?" "We accept reality," Jinwoo said. "Now, what support?" A smaller alien with blue skin spoke up. Cathara 9 is a Class 0 death world. The temperature goes from cold enough to freeze air to hot enough to melt metal. The gravity changes without warning. The air will kill you. The plants try to eat anything that moves. The ground shakes every day. No known species has survived there for more than 1 standard month, added another alien with too many eyes. Most die within days. Myeon spoke for the first time. That doesn't answer the question about support. The council members whispered among themselves in their strange languages. Finally, Vexthon spoke again. "In our mercy, we will provide basic terraforming equipment and 1 year of supplies for your initial settlers." "How many settlers are we talking about?" Jinwoo asked. "All humans must leave civilized space within 2 standard years. You may begin with whoever volunteers to go first." Jinwoo nodded slowly. "We'll need transport ships." "We will provide those as well. Consider it our final gift to your species." The way he said final made it clear what the council expected. They thought they were sending humanity to die slowly on an impossible world. It was a clean way to get rid of the human problem without actually killing them directly. "Is there anything else you require?" Vexthon asked. Jinwoo looked around the Great Hall one more time. These aliens had decided that humans were too dangerous, too unpredictable, too aggressive for their ordered galaxy. They were probably right about all of that. "No," Jinwoo said. "We have everything we need." As they left the hall, Myeon walked beside him quietly. Only when they were back on their ship did she speak. "They have no idea what they just did," she said. "No," Jinwoo agreed. "They don't." 3 months later, the first transport ships gathered at Luna Station. Jinwoo stood in the observation deck watching the fleet take shape. 50,000 humans had volunteered for the first wave. Not refugees or criminals, volunteers. People who heard impossible death world and thought, challenge accepted. Taehyun Lee floated over to join him. As colony administrator, Taehyun would lead the first settlement. He was young for such a big job, but he had organized disaster relief on Mars during the dome collapse. If anyone could handle an angry planet, it was him. "The ships are loaded," Taehyun said. "We have engineers, doctors, soldiers, farmers, teachers, families, even some artists who wanted to paint alien sunsets." "What's the mood like?" Jinwoo asked. Taehyun grinned. "Excited, a little scared, but mostly excited. Do you know what they're calling it?" "What?" "The Great Adventure." like we're going on vacation to the worst place in the universe. Through the window, they could see people moving between the ships. Children pressed their faces to portholes looking at the stars. Adults checked equipment and made final preparations. These people knew they were going to a world that wanted to kill them. They were looking forward to it. The council thinks they're getting rid of us, Jinwoo said. Are they? Oh yes. They're getting rid of the humans who follow alien rules and ask alien permission for everything. The humans they're sending to Cathera 9. Jinwoo paused. Those humans won't need permission from anyone. Taehyun nodded. We should probably warn the planet. I think the planet will figure it out. The next day, the fleet departed. Jinwoo watched from Luna Station as 50 ships carrying 50,000 humans disappeared into hyperspace. They were heading for a world that had killed everyone who ever tried to live there. The Galactic Council was probably celebrating already. Miyeon joined him at the observation window. Think they'll make it? Taehyun's people? They'll make it. How can you be sure? Jinwoo thought about the volunteers he'd met. Engineers who solved impossible problems for fun. Soldiers who had never lost a battle. Scientists who looked at the word impossible and laughed. Families who had lived through the Mars dome collapse, the Europa icequakes, and the asteroid mining wars. Because they're human, he said finally. And humans are very, very good at not dying when they're supposed to. In the distance, more ships were gathering. The second wave of volunteers was already forming. Word had spread through human space about Cathera 9, and instead of making people afraid, it was making them curious. The Galactic Council had tried to exile humanity to hell. They had no idea that humans had been looking for a new hell to call home. The first thing that hit them was the smell. Even through the ship's air filters, Cathera 9 smelled like burned metal and dead things. Taehyun Lee stood on the bridge of the colony ship, watching the planet grow larger on the screen. It looked angry, he thought. Red storms swirled across continents that glowed with heat. Lightning flickered in clouds that looked thick as soup. Atmosphere report, Taehyun said. Chief Engineer So-min Choi looked up from her screens. Her face was pale. It's bad, sir. Really bad. The air has sulfur compounds that would kill most aliens in minutes. Oxygen levels are barely enough to breathe, and there are metals floating in the atmosphere that shouldn't be there. Temperature? Minus 200 degrees at the poles. Plus 400 at the equator. And it changes fast, really fast. Taehyun nodded. The Galactic Council had not lied about Cathera 9 being a Class 0 death world. What about landing sites? Geologist Hyunwoo Nam pointed to a section of the map. There's a canyon system here that looks stable. The temperature stays around 0 to 50 degrees. That's the best we're going to get. Gravity? That's the weird part. The gravity isn't just strong, it moves around. There are zones where you'd weigh 3 times normal, and other zones where you'd float. The fields shift every few hours. Salman spoke up again. Sir, the landing craft are already showing damage from the atmosphere. We need to get down fast or we won't have any ships left. Taehyun looked around the bridge at his team. These people had volunteered to come here. They knew what they were getting into. All right. We land in the canyon. Full environmental suits for everyone until we know what we're dealing with. The landing was rough. The planet's electromagnetic fields played havoc with their instruments. 2 ships crash-landed, but nobody died. The humans climbed out of their ships and looked around at their new home. The canyon was actually beautiful in a deadly way. Crystal formations grew from the walls like frozen fire. Strange plants with metallic leaves moved in the wind. The air shimmered with heat, and the ground vibrated with a constant low rumble. Welcome to paradise, muttered Marine Commander Jiho Kang, as he helped unload equipment. That was when the planet attacked them for the first time. The crystal plants suddenly straightened up and began shooting spikes of sharp mineral at the humans. The spikes moved fast, almost too fast to see. One hit Jiho's helmet and cracked the face shield. Contact! Jiho shouted, and his Marines responded instantly. But their weapons seemed strange here. The laser rifles worked fine, but the projectile weapons shot differently in the weird gravity. Bullets curved in impossible directions. The crystal plants kept shooting. More humans were hit, but their environmental suits held. The spikes were sharp, but not sharp enough to punch through modern armor. Dr. Yoonji Song, the expedition's xenobiologist, was watching the plants instead of running for cover. They're learning, she called out. Look at the pattern. She was right. The first spikes had hit arms, legs, and chests. Now the plants were aiming for helmet joints and suit seams. They were adapting to human defenses in real time. Fall back to the ships, Taehyun ordered, but Jiho had other ideas. No, forward! He led his Marines in a charge straight at the crystal plants. The plants shot more spikes, but humans are fast and clever. They used their own crashed ships as cover, then jumped over the plants' lines of fire. When the Marines reached the crystal forest, something interesting happened. The plants stopped shooting. They seemed confused. They had never dealt with prey that attacked back. Jiho grabbed one of the crystal plants and twisted. It came out of the ground with a sound like breaking glass. The other plants began backing away, actually moving their roots to retreat. They're afraid, Yoonji shouted, excited. They know how to hunt, but they don't know how to fight. Within an hour, the humans had cleared the crystal plants from around their landing site. Some they destroyed, but Yoonji convinced them to keep others alive for study. The plants that remained seemed to watch the humans carefully, but they didn't attack again. First lesson learned, Taehyun said, as they set up their temporary base. This planet fights dirty, but it's not used to fighting back. The real test came that night. The temperature dropped to -50 degrees in just 2 hours. The emergency shelters were designed for extreme cold, but not this extreme. Ice formed on the inside walls. The heating units struggled to keep up. Then the ground started shaking. Not an earthquake, something more regular, like a heartbeat. The vibrations made it hard to sleep and harder to think. It's like the planet is trying to shake us loose, said atmospheric specialist Dong-Hyun Oh. But Somin had a different idea. No, listen to the pattern. It's regular, predictable. She pulled out her instruments and began measuring. This isn't random seismic activity. This is geothermal. There are heat sources under us moving in cycles. Can we use it? Somin grinned. She always grinned when someone asked if she could use something dangerous. Give me 3 days and some equipment. I'll have this whole canyon powered by the planet's own tantrums. While Somin worked on her geothermal project, the others explored their new home. Yunwoo mapped the gravity fields and found they followed patterns. Strong gravity here, weak gravity there, all connected to underground metal deposits. The planet wasn't just randomly dangerous, it was systematically dangerous, like a machine designed to kill. Yoonji studied the crystal plants and found they were part of a larger organism. The whole forest was connected underground, sharing information about threats. That's how they had learned to target human weak spots so quickly. Dong-Hyun worked on the atmosphere problem. The air was poisonous, but it wasn't poisonous to everything. Some earth bacteria could actually eat the toxic compounds. If they could breed the right bacteria, they might clean the air around their base. 3 days later, Somin proved that human engineering was tougher than alien planets. She tapped into the geothermal source and suddenly their base had more power than they knew what to do with. The heaters ran constantly, keeping everyone warm. The lights burned bright in the alien darkness. That night, Taehyun sent a message back to Earth. It took 3 hours to get through the electromagnetic interference, but finally the signal reached human space. This is Haven Base. Kythera 9, he said into the communicator. Day 3 of colonization. Status report. The planet is indeed trying to kill us. Weather is terrible, gravity is insane, and the plants shoot back. Local wildlife considers humans to be either food or target practice. He paused, looking around at his people. They were tired, dirty, and some of them were injured. But they were also smiling. Engineers were already drawing plans for permanent buildings. Scientists were cataloging new discoveries every hour. Even the children were adapting, playing games that involved dodging gravity fields and crystal spikes. However, Taehyun continued, I'm pleased to report that Kythera 9 has severely underestimated what it's dealing with. We're not just surviving, we're making this place work for us. Someone has the geothermal grid online. Dong-Hyun is cleaning the atmosphere. Yoonji has figured out how to make the local plants behave. Through the window he could see the crystal forest. The plants were still there, but now they seemed to lean away from the human base as if showing respect or fear. The Galactic Council sent us here to die. Instead, I think we're going to teach this Deathworld some manners. Haven Base out. 3 months on Kythera 9 had changed everything. Taehyun Lee walked through what used to be the temporary landing site and was now becoming a real town. The emergency shelters had been replaced with permanent buildings that used the planet's own materials. Heat from the geothermal grid kept everything warm, and the crystal plants now grew in neat rows around the settlement like a living fence. Dr. Yoonji Song was the one who figured out how to make friends with the planet's weapons. She spent weeks studying the crystal plants, learning how they communicated through their underground root network. Then she did something that surprised everyone. She started talking back. They respond to electromagnetic signals, Yoonji explained to a group of new colonists who had just arrived on the second wave. The same kind our brains produce when we think. If you focus your thoughts in the right way, you can actually communicate with them. She knelt next to one of the crystal plants and placed her hand on its metallic surface. The plant's spikes, which had been pointing outward defensively, slowly folded down. Then, as if showing off, the plant turned toward a small pest animal that was trying to eat their crops and fired a single spike, killing it instantly. They're not just defensive systems, Yoonji said, standing up. They're partners. They protect our crops from pests. They provide raw materials when we need them, and they even help with construction by growing in specific patterns. The new colonists looked amazed and a little frightened. These were people who had volunteered to come to a death world, but seeing humans casually working with the planet's deadliest life forms was still shocking. Hyunwoo Nam had made similar progress with the gravity fields. What had seemed like random, dangerous zones turned out to be predictable and useful. Strong gravity areas were perfect for mining. They compressed materials into dense, valuable forms. Weak gravity areas were ideal for construction, allowing humans to move heavy equipment easily. The planet isn't trying to kill us randomly, Hyunwoo explained to the engineers. It has patterns, rules. Once you understand the rules, you can work with them instead of against them. He had mapped the entire valley system around Haven Base, marking safe paths and useful zones. The gravity fields changed on a schedule that followed the planet's internal heat flows. By timing their activities correctly, humans could move massive loads with almost no effort, then switch to high-gravity zones when they needed to compress or strengthen materials. But the biggest breakthrough came from physicist Minho Jung. While everyone else focused on surviving the planet's attacks, Minho studied its communication methods. Kythra 9's electromagnetic storms weren't just weather, they were data transmission. The entire planet is connected, Minho announced at the weekly settlement meeting. Every crystal formation, every gravity field, every electromagnetic storm, they're all part of one massive network. And I think I know how to plug into it. Is that safe? Taehyun asked. Minho grinned. Probably not. But if it works, we'll have faster-than-light communication across the entire planet, maybe even off-planet. It took 2 weeks to build Minho's communication array. It looked like a crystal tree made of metal and human electronics, designed to blend with the planet's natural systems. When they activated it for the first time, every human on Kythera 9 felt a strange tingling sensation. Then Minho's voice came through every communicator in the settlement, clear as if he was standing right next to them. But Minho was 50 kilometers away, testing the array from the edge of the gravity fields. Communications test successful, his voice said. But that's not the interesting part. I'm picking up signals from Earth, real-time signals. That was impossible. Earth was weeks away at light speed. But somehow, using Kythera 9's own communication network, they were receiving messages instantly. The first message was from Jinwoo Park. Congratulations on your success. The council is getting nervous. More volunteers are requesting transport to Kythera 9. Can you handle a larger population? Taehyun looked around at his settlement. 3 months ago, they had 50,000 people in temporary shelters struggling to survive. Now they had permanent buildings, reliable power, defensive systems, and working relationships with the planet's ecosystem. The population had grown to 75,000 with the second wave, and they were handling it easily. Send reply, Taehyun told Minho. We can handle more. Much more. Agricultural specialist Yeji Han had solved the food problem in a way that shocked even the other humans. She discovered that Kythera 9's hostile soil, when mixed with earth plants, created supercrops. Vegetables grew 3 times larger and more nutritious than anything possible on Earth. The planet's aggressive minerals acted like perfect fertilizer. It's like the soil was designed to make things grow, Yeji explained, but only if you know how to ask it nicely. Her greenhouses now produced enough food for twice their current population. The excess was being stored for future colonists, but also for trade. If they ever reconnected with galactic civilization, Kythera 9 food would be worth a fortune. Military engineer Jiho Kang had developed something he called Deathworld combat training. New colonists, learned to fight using the planet's own weapon systems. Crystal spikes became projectile weapons. Gravity fields became tactical advantages. Even the electromagnetic storms could be used to disrupt enemy electronics. Other species see a hostile environment, Jiho told his trainees. We see a weapons platform that we live inside. The trainees learned to move through changing gravity fields without losing balance. They practiced combat while wearing environmental suits. They studied how to predict and avoid the planet's various deadly phenomena. By the end of training, they could survive anywhere on Cathra 9 and fight effectively while doing it. But perhaps the most important change was in the people themselves. The humans on Cathra 9 were developing a culture unlike anything on Earth or in galactic civilization. They were proud of their ability to live with danger. They celebrated solutions to impossible problems. They competed to see who could turn the next planetary threat into a useful tool. Children grew up thinking it was normal for plants to shoot spikes and gravity to change direction. They played games that would terrify most aliens. They learned to read electromagnetic patterns the way Earth children learned to read books. We're becoming something new, Yunji observed during one of their evening meetings. Not just human, but adapted, specialized. Specialized for what? Taehyun asked. For thriving in places where nothing else can survive. The third wave of colonists brought another 100,000 people. Ship after ship landed in Haven Base, which had grown into Haven City. The new arrivals found not struggling refugees, but confident pioneers who had turned hell into home. And every day, more messages came from human space. More volunteers wanted to come. Other colonies wanted to learn Cathra 9's techniques. The Galactic Council was asking questions that sounded worried. They're starting to realize their mistake, Minho said, listening to intercepted Council communications through his planet-wide network. What mistake? Someone asked. They didn't exile us to a Deathworld, Minho replied. They gave us a Deathworld to live in, and now that Deathworld is on our side. Through the windows of Haven City, the crystal forests glowed softly in the alien sunset. The gravity fields hummed with controlled power. The electromagnetic storms painted beautiful colors across the sky while carrying messages between human settlements. Cathra 9 still tried to kill careless visitors. But for humans who belonged here, who understood its patterns and respected its power, the Deathworld had become something else entirely. It had become home. 1 year after the first landing, Cathra 9 began to change. Dr. Yunji Song noticed it first when her carefully trained crystal plants started acting strangely. They would follow her commands during the day, but at night she caught them moving in patterns she had never taught them. New formations appeared overnight. Not random growth, but deliberate structures that seemed designed for unknown purposes. The planet is learning, Yunji reported to the Settlement Council, but not just learning from us. It's learning about us, studying us. Taehyun Lee looked out at Haven City, now home to almost 200,000 humans, spread across dozens of interconnected settlements. The success story of human adaptation was visible everywhere. Geothermal power plants hummed with endless energy. Atmospheric processors had created breathable air in large dome areas. The crystal forest had been organized into defensive perimeters and communication networks. Learning what exactly? Taehyun asked. How to fight back better. Over the next few weeks, the evidence became impossible to ignore. The gravity fields that Hyunwoo Nam had so carefully mapped began shifting in new patterns. Equipment that had worked perfectly for months suddenly failed when gravity fluctuations appeared at unexpected times. The safe paths through the dangerous zones changed without warning. The crystal plants developed new attack methods. Instead of firing spikes directly at humans, they learned to ricochet shots off metal surfaces. They began targeting equipment instead of people, disabling tools and vehicles rather than trying to kill their operators. It's like playing chess with the entire planet, Hyunwoo muttered as he recalculated his gravity maps for the third time that week. Every time we figure out its strategy, it changes the rules. Min Ho-jung's communication network began picking up strange signals, not the usual electromagnetic patterns that he had learned to interpret, but new frequencies that seemed to carry complex information. When he tried to decode them, he discovered they were too sophisticated for human technology to fully understand. The planet has its own internet, Minho announced during an emergency meeting, and I think it's been watching everything we do through the crystal network. Atmospheric specialist Dong Yun-oh brought more bad news. New compounds are appearing in the air, Nothing immediately lethal, but they're specifically designed to interfere with our breathing equipment. The atmosphere is customizing itself to be more dangerous to humans. But the most disturbing discovery came from Yoonji's biological studies. She found that the planet's ecosystem was sharing information in real time. When humans in Haven City developed a new technique for dealing with crystal plants, the plants on the other side of the continent immediately knew about it and developed countermeasures. Kythera 9 has a collective intelligence, Yoonji explained. Every plant, every geological formation, every atmospheric system, they're all connected, and they're all learning to be better at killing humans specifically. So what do? Taehyun asked. Leave? The question hung in the air for a moment. Then Jiho Kang started laughing. Leave? Are you serious? Jiho stood up grinning. This is the best training exercise in human history. We're fighting an entire planet that adapts to everything we do. Our people are going to become the most dangerous fighters in the galaxy. Solman Choi nodded agreement. And I've been waiting for the planet to get serious about trying to kill us. Now I can really test some ideas I've been working on. Taehyun looked around the room at his department heads. These people had volunteered to live on a Deathworld. Now that the Deathworld was fighting back intelligently, they seemed more excited than worried. All right, Taehyun said. If the planet wants to escalate, we escalate too. The response was swift and creative. Solman developed new engineering techniques that used the planet's changing gravity fields as construction tools. When gravity increased unexpectedly, her buildings absorbed the force and converted it to structural strength. When gravity decreased, her systems used the opportunity to lift massive components into place. Hyunwoo stopped trying to predict the gravity fields and instead learned to work with them in real time. He trained teams of miners and builders to read the subtle signs of gravitational change and adapt their work accordingly. Instead of fighting the planet's unpredictability, they made it part of their process. Yoonji took a different approach with the crystal plants. Instead of trying to control them, she began communicating with the collective intelligence directly. Using Minho's electromagnetic equipment, she sent complex signals into the planetary network. What are you telling them? Taehyun asked. That we're not invaders, Yoonji replied. We're partners. We want to live here, not conquer here. The planet's response was immediate and dramatic. The crystal plants stopped their new attack patterns and began growing in even more complex formations. But these weren't defensive structures. They were collaborative ones. Platforms for humans to work from, bridges across dangerous terrain, even artistic sculptures that had no practical purpose except beauty. I think it's trying to negotiate, Yoonji said, amazed. The negotiation took weeks and involved the entire human population. Every settlement participated by sending signals through the crystal network. The messages were part mathematics, part art, part philosophy. Humans tried to explain who they were and why they wanted to live on Kythera 9. The planet responded with increasingly complex environmental changes. But these weren't attacks, they were tests. Gravity fields that required teamwork to navigate. Atmospheric challenges that demanded creative engineering solutions. Crystal formations that posed puzzles for human intelligence to solve. It's not trying to kill us anymore, Minho realized. It's trying to understand us. The breakthrough came when young colonist children who had grown up on Kythera 9 began interacting with the crystal plants in ways adults couldn't. They seemed to naturally understand the electromagnetic communication methods. They played games with the gravity fields that looked like dancing. They breathed the processed atmosphere as easily as Earth air. The kids are native, Yoonji observed. They're not adapted humans anymore, they're Kythera 9 humans, a new subspecies. The children served as translators between human adults and the planetary intelligence. Through them, the planet explained that it had been alone for millions of years. It had developed its hostile defenses because every previous visitor had tried to change it or exploit it. Humans were different. They didn't try to make Kythera 9 into Earth. They learned to be Kythera 9 humans instead. The crisis that had threatened to destroy the colony became the foundation for something unprecedented in galactic history, a true partnership between a species and a planetary intelligence. The planet began actively helping human settlements. Gravity fields moved to assist construction projects. Crystal formations grew to provide exactly the materials needed for each task. The atmosphere adjusted to become more breathable while maintaining its unique properties. In return, humans brought something the planet had never experienced: creativity, art, music, and stories. They built beautiful structures that served no survival purpose except to make the world more interesting. They created gardens that combined Earth and Cathara 9 plants in patterns that pleased both human and planetary aesthetics. We're not colonizing anymore, Taehyun realized. We're joining. When the year anniversary of first landing arrived, Haven City had become something that would have been impossible on any other world. It was a hybrid creation, part human engineering and part planetary cooperation, buildings that grew themselves using controlled crystal formation, transportation systems that surfed gravity waves, power grids that tapped directly into the planet's electromagnetic consciousness. The humans who lived there were changing too. Stronger, more adaptable, more intuitive about their environment. They could predict weather changes by feel, navigate gravity fields by instinct, and communicate with their world in ways that seemed like magic to outsiders. The Galactic Council wanted to get rid of dangerous humans, Taehyun said in his report to Earth. Instead, they've created humans who can live in partnership with a planetary intelligence. I don't think they're going to like what we're becoming. Through the crystal network, Cathara 9 pulsed with something that felt like satisfaction. It had been alone for so long. Now it had partners who understood that survival wasn't about conquering the environment. It was about becoming part of it. 2 years after humanity's exile began, Council leader Vexthon stood in his private chambers staring at reports that made no sense. The data from Cathara 9 showed impossible readings. Energy signatures that shouldn't exist. Atmospheric changes that violated everything known about Class 0 Deathworlds. Electromagnetic broadcasts on frequencies that no natural phenomenon could produce. The monitoring equipment must be broken, Vexthon said to his aide. A nervous creature with silver skin and 4 eyes. We sent 3 different probe teams, sir. All reported the same impossible data. And then, the aide's voice trailed off. And then what? One of the probe ships tried to land for closer inspection. The crew sent back video before contact was lost. Vexthon accessed the files, expecting to see the usual Deathworld carnage. Broken ships, dead explorers. Another confirmation that Cathara 9 remained the galaxy's most effective natural prison. Instead, he saw a city, not human prefab structures barely clinging to survival, but a real city with buildings that seemed to grow from the planet itself. Streets filled with humans walking casually through what should have been lethal atmosphere, children playing in areas where gravitational forces should have crushed them flat, gardens where earth plants grew alongside Cathara 9's crystal formations. This is a mistake, Vexthon said. Some kind of recording error, but the video continued. Humans in environmental suits waved at the probe ship. Others emerged from crystal structures that pulsed with internal light. In the distance, massive industrial complexes hummed with activity, powered by energy sources that the probe's instruments couldn't identify. There are over 300,000 of them now, the aide whispered. 300,000 humans living on a Class 0 death world. Vexthon felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries. Fear. Send Scout Leader Zilnora. She will investigate personally. 2 weeks later, Scout Leader Zilnora's survey fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Cathara 9's system. Zilnora was from a species known for their ability to survive in extreme environments. If anyone could get close to the human settlements and report accurately, it was her. But even Zilnora was unprepared for what she found. Cathara 9 was broadcasting. Not just electromagnetic signals, but complex communications across multiple spectrums. The planet that had been invisible to most sensors for millions of years now blazed with artificial activity. Incoming transmission, her communications officer announced. The main screen flickered, then showed a human face. A young man with dark hair and calm eyes wearing what looked like a military uniform. This is Governor Jinwoo Park of New Terra, the human said. Welcome to our system. Are you here for diplomatic contact or just looking around? New Terra. They had named the Deathworld New Terra. I am Scout Leader Zilnora of the Galactic Council, she replied carefully. We are conducting a routine survey. Of course you are. Would you like to land? We have facilities that can accommodate most galactic species. Fair warning, though. Our atmosphere might be a bit challenging for your life support systems. Zilnora looked at her instruments. The atmospheric readings showed compounds that would kill her entire crew within minutes of exposure. We appreciate the offer, But our scans indicate your atmosphere is hostile to our biology. Governor Park smiled. Yes, we've been working on that. The planet's atmosphere is naturally aggressive, but we've learned to work with it rather than against it. Most areas around our cities are breathable for humans now, though I admit it's still pretty tough on visitors. How many of you are there? Current population is just over 400,000. We're expecting another 100,000 next month when the latest transport arrives. 400,000 on a Class 0 Deathworld, and they were expecting more. Governor Park, I must ask, what is your situation here? The council understood that humans were exiled to Cathera 9 as punishment. Park's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in his eyes. Ah yes, the exile. We remember, though we call it something different now. What do you call it? The best thing that ever happened to us? Zilnora's crew exchanged worried looks. She decided to be direct. The council expected that Cathera 9 would, that the challenges of the environment would, that we would die? Park finished. Yes, I imagine they did. Would you like to see why that didn't work out the way they planned? The transmission shifted to external cameras. Zilnora watched in growing horror as the feed showed human cities built into and around Cathera 9's most dangerous features. Settlements constructed over active volcanic vents using the geothermal energy for power. Residential areas where crystal formations had been trained to grow in protective patterns. Transportation systems that used controlled gravity fields to move people and cargo. This is impossible, Zilnora breathed. We thought so too at first. Turns out Cathera 9 just needed someone who was willing to work with it instead of trying to conquer it. The camera feed showed children, human children, playing in areas that registered lethal on every one of Zilnora's instruments. They moved through shifting gravity fields like dancers, breathed processed atmosphere like it was pure oxygen, and interacted with crystal plants that had been described as the most dangerous organisms in known space. You're young, Zilnora said. They appear to be adapted, native-born, Park confirmed. They're the first generation of true New Terra humans, stronger, faster, more resilient than Earth humans. They can survive in environments that would challenge most galactic species. Zilnora's hands shook as she processed the implications. The Council had tried to exile humanity to certain death. Instead, they had created superhumans adapted to the most extreme survival conditions possible. Governor Park, she said carefully, the Council might be interested in discussing your situation. Perhaps some form of reconciliation? Park was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was polite but final. Scout Leader, please tell the Council that we appreciate their interest. But we are no longer part of galactic civilization. We are citizens of New Terra now. Surely some accommodation could be reached. The Council had their chance to accommodate us. They chose exile instead. We chose to make exile into freedom. The transmission ended, leaving Zilnora staring at a blank screen. She looked around at her crew. Representatives of 5 different species, all trained scouts with experience in extreme environments. All of them looked terrified. What do we report? Her science officer asked. Zilnora thought about the children playing in lethal gravity fields, about the cities that thrived in conditions that would kill most known life forms, about humans who had been given the worst punishment the Council could devise and turned it into the foundation of a new civilization. We report the truth, she said finally. Humanity was not eliminated by exile to Cathera 9, they were enhanced by it. The journey back to Council space took 2 weeks. During that time, Zilnora's scouts analyzed every piece of data they had gathered. The conclusions were unavoidable and frightening. Humanity had not just survived on Cathera 9. They had formed a symbiotic relationship with a planetary intelligence. They had developed technology that used extreme environmental conditions as power sources. They had evolved in just 2 years into something that might be more dangerous than the original humans the Council had feared. They turned a Class 0 Deathworld into a fortress, Zilnora told Council Leader Vexathon upon her return. An impregnable fortress that makes them stronger instead of weaker. If they ever decide to rejoin galactic civilization, they will be unstoppable, Vexathon finished. The Galactic Council had made the greatest strategic error in their history. They had tried to eliminate a threat by giving it the ultimate weapon, a world that would forge its inhabitants into something beyond normal biological limits. What do we do? Asked another council member. Vex then looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere among them, humanity was growing stronger every day on a world that loved them back. "We hope," he said quietly, "that they remain content to stay where they are."